Hello, Internet. My name is Ryan Ingram, author of Rental Property Insurance, an investor's guide to insurance. This is an ebook. I made it available to you for free in the link below. So over the next few videos, we're going to be talking about rental property insurance, exactly what you should be looking for as an investor. And it's just really important to understand exactly how your property is insured, because most people don't realize that they're either underinsured or overinsured until the time of a claim. And at that point, it's entirely too late to make any sort of changes to your policy. I'm an investor myself. I've got over 60 doors, and the entire reason that I wrote this book and really got into the property and casualty insurance world to begin with is because when I became an investor, I quickly realized that not many insurance people knew how to insure correctly a rental property. The investor world and the insurance world used completely different words to describe the same thing. So after I bought my first rental property and I began looking for insurance, I couldn't find someone that used the same terminology that all of my investor friends did. So as I started getting to know more real estate investors, I quickly realized that we all had the same problem, just because the two worlds were using completely different verbiage. So I made a deep dive and a commitment to learn everything that I could about insuring rental properties. Consequently, now I own an insurance agency. This is in no way a solicitation for you to use me as your service. I'm not your insurance agent. Before you act on anything in any of these videos, you need to be sure to consult your insurance agent to make sure that you are getting the coverage best for you. But nonetheless, I now own an insurance agency, and we exclusively provide insurance to other real estate investors. In this first video, let's discuss the difference between a homeowner's policy and a dwelling fire policy. So the main difference is that a homeowner's policy is for your personal home, a property that you own or occupy. A dwelling fire policy is for any residential rental property that is not owner occupied. Other than that, the policy forms are exactly the same. And what I mean by policy forms are when you get your declaration pages, those shows you how much coverage you have on your home or your rental property. And then after the declaration pages, you have the actual policy forms, which discuss what's covered, what isn't, any sort of exclusions that might be on the policy. And because each insurance company provides their own policy forms, then you're going to want to read through your own policy and double check anything that I say, again, because every insurance company is different and every situation is different. There's no cookie cutter template that you could put over all investors or all insurance policies. So now that we've covered the main difference of the homeowners and dwelling fire policy, let's now talk about the similarities. So now that we've discussed the main difference between the homeowners policy and the dwelling fire policy, let's talk about the similarities, which are the policy forms, the actual loss settlements, which is actual cash value or replacement cost, and then the actual coverage letters or the available coverages on the insurance policy. So let's start with the policy forms. Now, the first form that you have is called Basic, or HO1. HO1 is what people in the insurance industry would call this policy. Now, surprisingly, this basic form of coverage provides the most basic form of coverage. Things like wind, fire, and things that you would just automatically, instinctually understand that insurance covers. I'm going to show you a form here once we go through all of them. The second form is Broad, or HO2. Broad is a little bit more complex than your basic form. It includes, the only thing that I know for sure that Broad covers and not basic is the weight of ice or the weight of snow, which, hey, where I'm from in North Carolina, not a big deal at all. Here in the Midwest, in Ohio, that could really come in handy. And the third form is called Special Form. Now, there's one more, it's called an HO5, but that in rental properties is not anything that we ever need to discuss. Now, special form, this covers everything. This is what's called an open peril policy. Now, what open peril means that anything that could possibly happen to your property is covered unless the policy form specifically excludes it. If something crazy happens to your property, under special form, it's going to be covered. unless you read through the policy and it's excluded. Now, both broad and basic form, that's what's called named peril policy. Now, the word peril just means cause of loss. Something that happened, like fire is a peril, wind is a peril, water damage is a peril, anything that could cause damage to the property. It's a strange word, but nonetheless, that's what it means, and that's how it's used. So in basic and broad, a named peril, what that means is the policy does not provide any coverage unless it is listed inside the policy form. So under a named peril, if and only if the cause of loss or the peril is listed inside the policy, will this insurance policy provide any amount of coverage. All right, now that we've covered those and we discussed the ideology of it, let's actually look at the policy coverage form to see what all is covered. All right, so here you can see the cause of loss forms comparison chart. This was generously provided by the Certified Insurance Counselors, or the CIC, so let's thank them for that. So here you can see the difference between the broad form and the basic. So your fire, lightning, explosion, windstorm, hail, smoke, aircraft, riot, vandalism, sprinkler leakage, sinkhole, volcanic action, and then your fungus, wet rot, dry rot, and bacteria. The fungus, wet rot, dry rot, and bacteria, that is like mold. That's a really fancy, convoluted way of saying mold. So these are all of the causes of loss that are covered on basic. And remember, basic is a named peril policy, which means it has to be listed here. So if a fire occurs on your property, then it's covered because it's named here. Same with broad, it's also named. So as you can see here on broad, between broad and basic, the coverages that broad provides that basic does not are falling objects, weight of snow, ice, or sleet, water damage, and then additional coverage for collapse. Now, what all that means is purely situational. So again, like I said, all of this information is good to have, but this video alone is educational. In order to truly have a grasp of what is and isn't covered, you need to both speak with your agent and also consult the actual policy form that you've purchased. And again, even though this was very generously provided by the CIC, then this doesn't necessarily mean that your policy is written this way or that your basic policy does provide coverage for vandalism. We see the 1 star. It may be an individually excluded endorsement. So you're most certainly going to not want to take this comparison sheets form for, you're just going to want to take it at face value. You're not going to want to make any decisions or anything based on this form alone. Because as helpful as this form is, I also think that it falls a little bit short, because on special form, now that's an open peril policy, right? So everything is covered, but it's just not that detailed, because here the only things that it looks like it adds are theft and direct physical loss. Now, direct physical loss is kind of like a catch-all, right? Because no damage would be done to the property without some sort of direct physical loss. But nonetheless, special form is an open peril. So it is covered regardless of whether or not it's named in the policy, unless, of course, it's specifically excluded. So if you purchase a special formed insurance policy, then you're just going to want to familiarize yourself with those exclusions. Now, I think this comparison chart is incredibly beneficial to have. So if you would like to download this copy, you can go to insuredbyingram.com/download, and I'll put the link in the description, but this will give you access to this comparison chart. And when you go to that link, it will ask you to enter in your email address, but rest assured, I will never email you. And if I do, it's going to be so seldom that you should most certainly open it up and look at it. All right, so that is all for this video. In the next video, we're going to talk about the other 2 similarities, which again are the loss settlement and the actual coverage letters. Thanks so much, and talk to you guys soon.